Thanks for being here, Lachlan. I
Pleasure.
appreciate it, man. You obviously have had a pretty interesting life from what we've gathered, what you've told us so far. You've had some recent changes in your life too. So we want to grab from you pretty much your whole lifetime. Just go through your life from your earliest memory all the way up until now for us.
That's a tough question. I think looking back to the early periods, sort of preschool and pre-kindergarten, I struggle to think back to those periods and find things that I remember. I think growing up in a small town, I sort of had access to those locations post-event. So I've got three younger brothers, one who's 10 years younger than me. So a lot of the events that I went through as a kid, he obviously went through 10 years later, and then I got to go back and witness the same events. So I feel like a lot of my memories from those times come from seeing my younger brothers in a similar position, which I don't know if my memories are getting muddled up with that, or I can place myself in those positions because I can imagine it or whatever it is. But pre-kindergarten, I don't remember a whole lot. Moving into kindergarten and year one, the more I thought about this, my first memory was in year one. I went to a Catholic school in Crookville where I grew up, and we used to have we went to church basically every Friday. And there was an award for the person that was best behaved in church. And I remember for some reason, I remember one day that I knelt the longest, was sitting the straightest, was the quietest, and went back to the classroom and I didn't get the lolly. And yeah, looking and thinking back to that now, it's crazy that that's one of the things that I remember. And I remember sitting in that church for so much of my childhood, and being an altar server when I got into year 6, and all that sort of stuff, which is funny to look back on now, because I feel like as you grow older and start making your own decisions, not a lot of people, but the majority of people I know sort of moved away from that. And obviously when you didn't have a choice or a decision to make about sitting through church, or having a religion or whatever it is. And yeah, I guess the older I got, the more that I moved away from it. And I appreciate how I grew up in that sense with, I feel like I had a lot of conversations with something that was more of a higher power, I guess, and being thankful for events that took place, or asking for help and whatever that is, and sort of gave me a good base of, I feel like, being a good enough person, that sort of all came from there. And moving forward into that, I remember year one, we learned about, every year one, it was like a notorious thing that we learned about dinosaurs as kids. And still to this day I have a fascination with dinosaurs. And we just got back from Montana and had a day at the Montana Museum or whatever it was over there, which was so many dinosaur fossils and stuff, which was it took me right back to year one and learning about those. And that whole experience was so cool. And people laugh at me now, like a lot of the boys laugh at me, even Abby, my partner, my wife, laughs at me about it now. And yeah, it's strange, but it was obviously a cool childhood, and growing up in a small country town where back then the population was 2,500 or whatever it was. And walk down the main street, say hello to everyone, know who everyone is, they know who you are. Playing footy from under 6s sort of through to back in Crookville to under 15s, and playing with the same set of guys. Being a big fish in a small pond and winning competitions through that whole 10 years, but still being mates with a lot of those guys now. And I remember if I go back to Crookville and drive past that oval, I have so many good memories of running around on the weekends and then going there during the week and kicking footies with Dad, or having three brothers. We always played 2v2 football, and it was there was always a game of footy going on, or in the summer it was a game of cricket. And we were a very active bunch. Having three younger brothers was a cool experience. I still remember going to hospital and seeing the youngest one like a day after he was born, 2 days after he was born. Jim's name was Josh for 2 days because I wanted it to be Josh, and then mum and dad didn't like it, so they scribbled his name out on the card or whatever it was and changed it to James. And yeah, ever since then, I've always had a strong sense of sort of like the older brother type feeling of looking after them and almost being responsible for what they do and who they are. And they're a lovely bunch of kids, and it was a really cool way to grow up with all three of them alongside us, and sort of me and the youngest versus the two middle kids and playing footy. And as it progressed to driving around paddock bashes when we moved out onto a farm, and yeah, it's throwing eggs at each other when they were driving, and it's growing up on the farm with 4 boys was just nuts. It was so much fun, and obviously made me the person I am today. And the last memory I had of primary school was I've got 2. Mum was a casual teacher when I was there. So she would take us to school, obviously, and then the day she would teach, she would drive us to school and stay there all day. And when the three, myself and my 2 younger brothers, would line up at the kitchen bench to get our hair done before we go to school. So Mum would spray us with the water bottle, put a bit of gel in her hair, and we'd walk through, and the next one would come up, and we'd just cycle through, jump in the car. And then yeah, going into year 6, I remember I was year 5, we had a book week. I dressed up as Willy Wonka. I was only laughing about this with Mum the other day, and one of the kids in year 6 took offence to either me, my costume, or whatever it was. And it was the first time I'd ever been punched. And as a 5-year-old, as a year 5 kid, it was like obviously jarring, and cried straight to Mum and all the repercussions that came off the back of that. And then yeah, moving forward from that, sort of ended up somewhat becoming mates with that bloke throughout high school, and still a guy that you see around town now, and still something that is probably one of my main memories of primary school. And yeah, and outside of that, it's just like, it was just sport. We played so much sport, cricket in the summer, so much footy in the winter, and Crook was somewhat isolated from the teams that we played. So we played in the Canberra competition. We'd play against Cooma, which was about 2.5 hours. We'd play cricket against Batemans Bay, which is similar. But yeah, spent so much time travelling, and I don't know how Mum and Dad did it all with, there's obviously, there was a period of time there for a few years where we were going to 4 different grounds Saturday to play school rugby or whatever it was, and then Sunday we play league, and there'd be 4 different grounds. And I was like, the country town thing, I truly believe it takes a village, and we were lucky to have some really good mates that had really good parents that were really good mates with my parents, and we all just, you find a way to get it done. And yeah, fortunately for me, the sporting route worked out thus far. And there's always a period of time before games, back when I was playing, where you'd sort of sit there and think about what my job looks like now when I run on this field, but also who got me here. And it's nice reflecting on that, because there's been so many, outside of Mum and Dad and my brothers and stuff, there's been so many people that have had a role in my journey to where I am now. And the retirement thing that's happened in the last sort of 6 months has given me a lot of time to look back on it and reflect on those people, and to be able to go to them and say thank you, and make sure that they know that they played that role. Because it's a lot of the time people don't even realise the role that they play, and it's just what you do, right? So one of my really good mates from primary school, Nick Skelly, his name was, his old man Troy was an absolute weapon, and we played a lot of cricket together, Nick and I. Dad was away working, we made a rep team, and Nick and I, and Troy took us, and my pop took us. So we stayed in this little motel in the middle of the Riverina, and had a week there with Pop and Nick's dad, and like played pool every afternoon and drank a fire engine at the pub after the game. And yeah, it's the sort of memories that you not suppress, but just don't really think about until you're told to think about them. And those sort of things are so cool. It's, as I said, the whole village thing is so true, and very fortunate to grow up the way that I did. Mm.
And moving through like past sort of primary school, I feel like, especially in a sporting sense, And just growing up through teenagehood, what was that like for you through high school? Like your high school experience, and then also I guess that relates to probably your starting to realize that, or maybe I could pursue, sport as a career. And
I don't think there was ever a time, like a light bulb moment, where I thought that I'm going to play professional sport or I'm just going to make this work. But it was definitely a thing that grew on me. And then the more rep teams I made and the more I enjoyed the rugby league side of things. And then you kick into a little bit of the rep stuff. And I was lucky enough to get a few awards through the 16s and 18s and stuff. And then that sort of is when I put all the eggs in that basket. I remember playing like year 7 rugby union at school was some of the most fun I had playing sport ever, because you get to play with all the boys that you go to school with, and you got so many emotions going through you at that period of time, like 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 at school, and the hormones and how emotional everything is, and that was so much fun. We had such a good crew, and played the full year of year 7 rugby union and league, so Saturdays would always be rugby union. And one of the coolest things about playing rugby for school was we had a school bus, so there's be like 20 of us, year 7 kids, with one of our dads driving a bus to Canberra or wherever it was to go and play footy. And then Sunday we do it all again, play league for Crookville. And it was nice having a sort of somewhat separation between the two, with a different set of guys that I'd played high school with, because I was in Goulburn, out of town, away from where I grew up. And then Crookville was obviously playing with all the boys that I played the junior stuff through. And going back on the year 7 thing, my first day of school, our school was a 7, 8, 9 campus and a 10, 11, 12. My first day of high school, I was the only boy to go to Trinity from home. And obviously I didn't want mum to drop me off at school the first day of school, because that would be not cool. So I jumped on the school bus. Our school bus took us probably 45 to 50 minutes to get into town. So our school bus picked us up at like 7:30. And in winter in Crookville, that was a tough ask. And this old rickety school bus, the windows didn't shut properly. And just remember sitting in my blazer in the corner, tucked up as much as I could be, and jumped on that bus, got out at the bus stop, which was about a 500-metre walk from the school, and expected all these other people to jump off with me. And I was the only one that jumped off, because year 11 and 12 started the same day as us, but they were on a different campus. So I jumped off the bus, walk up the hill, and the only one there. I got there to school at like 8:15, so no one's at school yet. I'm standing around just thinking, what have I done? I wish mum was here. And this elderly couple came up to me. I still to this day have no idea who they were, why they were there, or whatever it was. And she said, would you like a photo? She took a photo of me. This was year 7, first day of year 7. 2 years later in year 9, I get the photo in an envelope saying this is from that day. No idea who they were, why they were there, but that was my first high school experience. So it's, it was
That's so cool.
very strange. But going to high school on my own and having to make a whole new set of mates and stuff was obviously scared the living daylights out of me, but I'm very glad I did. I had a lot of good memories there, met a lot of really good teachers, which we'll probably get into, but the whole year 7 rugby thing, played year 8, ended up doing my ACL in one of the gala days at the start of that year. Just went to step off it, no one around, snapped on me, played the rest of the game, went home that afternoon, my knee swelled up massively, and showed Dad, and we sort of said, this doesn't look great. Went into the doctor, they said, yeah, you need to go have a scan. Found out I tore my ACL, was on public health, so I couldn't choose my surgeon or any of that sort of stuff, which now you take for granted being in this professional world that we're in, professional sporting world. And it took 6 months to get into surgery. So that 6 months leading up to that, I was running around the backyard with my brother still. Every 5 or 10 minutes would go to step off it, would snap on me, I'd fall over, and it just became part of life for that 6 months. And then going through the operation down in Barrel, had that all fixed up, rehabbed it all. And it's funny looking at it now. I did rehab for that knee. I was like, physio is not cheap, so obviously we didn't go every day like we would at the club. And I went to physio probably, say that was a 45-week rehab, I reckon 15 times. 1 day a week, and still haven't had a problem with it since. But post that, I've done 2 ACLs on the other side, which I've professionally rehabbed basically every day for 9 months. So it's, look into that what you will, but it's very tough time that year 8 missing all that sport. And as I said, like the emotional side of growing up and being good at a sport and having a team that was so you know, passionate about what we did and enjoying each other's company was sad to miss out on. Those years 7, 8, 9, 10, I had a school teacher coach, I guess, Mr. McCarthy, his name was, and still keep in contact now. And he's one of those guys that scared the living daylights out of you at school. Was one of those guys that carried around a big folder of sheets and would chuck them on the projector and chuck them up on the board, and you'd be writing stuff down for an hour and you'd be too scared to talk. And then he'd come to training in the afternoon and he would just have this, you just knew how passionate he was about the game and about making us better men. And he's one of those ones that I spoke about before that, you know, got me to where I am now, and to be able to still have a relationship with him and talk to him quite often, have him come to games and stuff is really cool, and it sort of makes me passionate about what my role within the game is now, or whether it's in a school or whatever it is, to sit back and think about the people that had that influence on my life, and then to potentially, hopefully, be that for someone else. And year 9 went back to rugby, school rugby, played that for basically year 9 and year 10. Year 10 under 16s, I trialled for the Raiders, Harold Matt's team. Somehow made that. Looking back on it now, it was a roller coaster. So we make that, get selected in that. That was when I stopped playing cricket, because their pre-season starts November, which is basically when cricket's played. So mum and a lot of dad would drive me to training, sort of 3 or 4 days a week to Canberra, which is from school was about an hour, then an hour and a half home on a back road, which is filled with kangaroos and wombats. And I'd sleep the whole way home, sleep the whole way there, and just wake up at home, and dad would jump out, dad would wake up, go to work the next day. And sort of reflecting on even like mum and dad's role in my life. And mum was she's a very smart lady and school teacher, so very nurturing and very caring. And dad's the complete opposite, like just gets his hands dirty if something needs to be done. If you told him to take this stadium down, he'd say, yeah, how long we got? Like, he's just one of those guys that just gets in. Even now, like, I ask him to come up to the house, and my little brother would say, I need some help landscaping and doing this sort of stuff. And the other week they were up here just moving like 5 ton of dirt for the day, and then sleep in our bed and then leave the next morning at 6 a.m. to go home and do something else. It's definitely been like a big part of why I got where I got with my professional sport, is the sort of work ethic that was instilled in me as a kid from those two. And even like looking back on dad never finished high school, so he went to year 10, dropped out of year 10 or 11, then was on the council for years and years, and was a shearer. So spent a lot of time in shearing sheds, and it's a tough gig. I don't know how they do it or why they do it, for starters, and why dad still does it. I'll never understand it. We did that for years and years, and then he ended up becoming a cop, so he had to go back and do like his bridging course or whatever it is to essentially finish school, and then get into the college to become a cop. And did that when I was in year 6. I remember the marching out parade, where sort of seeing him standing in Goulburn on the big tarmac and finishing that was really cool. And I can only imagine how proud he was, and how proud mum was of him for doing all that, because dad's not a scholar by any means, and just one of those guys that just gets in and finds a way to get it done. So growing up, there was times he'd walk into our room at 6 in the morning and say, mate, I need help shearing. And I'd hear him knock on the door, and I'd just say, please be my brother's room, please not be this one. During that whole period, and then moving into high school, I used to invite mates over, knowing that we were shearing the next day, and the day after that, and not tell them, and just wait for dad to come in and knock on our door and say, come on boys, I need some help. And mate, we'd be in a shearing shed for 7 or 8 hours, can't hear anything, generator running, like no music, just looking at your mate's filthy on you because you dragged him out, and you drag a sheep out and throwing wool around, and it's it's definitely character building, and it's like, thinking back on it now, I'm so stoked that that's how I grew up and the way that I was raised, because if it wasn't that way, I don't know what sport would look like for me now, or what I'd be doing. It's definitely a main part of who I am, and I feel like it's held me in good stead. Like, looking back on the under 16s, Harold Matt stuff, and trialing there, I was by no means deserved to be part of that team. I was just turned up day one as fit as I could be. All I tried to do was win every single fitness drill and be the fittest, and like compete on everything I could do. One of our coaches was a guy from Goulburn who I still speak to now, and I got a lot of time for. And another one of those guys that deserves a lot of praise for where I ended up. Was basically not really an assistant coach of the team, but just a guy that came and helped out. And he was another one of those guys that drove me from Goulburn to Canberra, and Goulburn to Canberra with a few other guys from back home, and would do that three or 4 days a week. And I knew I was no chance of making that team. And the story he tells was I was actually gone in the first set of cuts. And Freezer, Steve Freebody, his name is, would go to the coach and say, he's winning everything, just trust me, just stick with him. Ended up sticking with me, got to round one, didn't get picked in the team, and as a 16-year-old kid, that's your whole world's shattered, right? And I remember watching that game over in Canberra, and I was playing half back then and thinking, this is the end, I've done everything I could and I'm not going to get there. And one of the centres ended up hurting themselves that week. So the next week they needed a centre, and I've never played centre before in my life, and Free said, why don't you give him a crack? Ended up playing centre that week, got man of the match, played centre the rest of the year, ended up getting best and fairest for under 16s, signed a contract with the Raiders for the next 2 years, and then I guess the rest is history from there. But it's just one of those guys that believed in me, and had somewhat of a soft spot for me, and looked after me enough to get me into that role. And then, like, moving forward, that's the basis of what I tell kids now, is if you're fit and have a crack and you're a hard worker, then if it's not here, it doesn't work out, it'll work out later, because hard workers get lucky. And I truly believe that I've been one of the luckiest NRL players to go through, regardless of injury and all that sort of stuff. But the sliding doors moments I've had from, like my debut in Canberra when I would have been 19, was round 2, 2016. Round 1, both our halves were injured. One of them dislocated the shoulder, the other broke his cheekbone. So Canberra were only carrying 2 other halves, myself and Sam Williams. And I remember the coach came up to me and said, are you ready? And there's no way I was ready, but you never tell them that. So I said, yeah, absolutely. Was coming off the back of a shoulder reconstruction the year before. So went into that round 2 game, played against the Roosters. The whole week leading up to that was so unbelievable. And one of my biggest regrets of my sporting career is looking back on that and not taking it seriously, or not soaking it in. It's when I was in Canberra, I just assumed I was going to play 300 first grade games, like captain the club, be there forever. It's just the journey I had mapped out in my head after my 16s and 18s career. And life never works the way you think it's going to. And I took that whole thing for granted. We had a big lunch with the whole squad. The coach came out, Dad came out, presented my jersey. My uncle played 300 games for the club, and it was such a cool time that, yeah, I took for granted and just assumed that this is going to be how it's going to be moving forward. And running out to that stadium that I spent so much time in, cheering my Uncle Toots on and freezing my backside off, middle of Canberra winter, watching him play. And then to be able to run out to the same theme song that he ran out to, and on the same field in front of my family that's got a private box up, watching the game with like 25, 30 people in it, was like the feeling that you get when that happens is so hard to explain. And I played the first 30 minutes of that game, subluxed my shoulder, which I thought was it was the first time I'd injured my shoulder since the dislocation. So I thought there was just the same thing. Ended up going off the field 30 minutes into my debut, did all my tests and was still strong, which surprised me because I thought I was done. So I'm basically walking off in tears thinking it's all over again for the year. Subluxed my shoulder, find out I can still play. Was a chance of going back on that game. The interchange didn't work out that way or whatever it was. And Following week, expected to play first grade again. Walked in the coach's office. I'm not playing first grade. I'm playing reserve grade. Played reserve grade the next 2 years. Sort of lost the. Don't exactly know what happened, but lost the sort of trust and belief in the staff. That they lost the sort of trust and belief in me. And coming from the years before where I had so much trust and so much belief from so many coaches, that because I was quite a handy young, like junior rep footballer, then moving into going small fish into a big pond, I just assumed that it would work the way that it had the years before, and it just obviously just never did. And the next 2 years sort of flopped around in reserve grade there, and was not a good person by any means. It's moving up here and sort of having everything taken away from me in Canberra, and sort of no contract given to me, and realising that I've got to get out of here, otherwise it's over, was one of the, it would be the toughest period of my life, because I thought my dream was done, and I thought I was going to have to go sign a contract with a Queensland Cup team and essentially do a whole pre-season or a year with them, and then maybe hope to jump into a development contract with a first grade team somewhere else, or whatever it was. And Trent Barrett was coaching here at the time, and sort of we sort of mucked around with a contract here and a contract somewhere else, and it never ended up working out. The Manly one got pulled about 6 weeks into it, and I'm sitting at the end of the season going, I've got nothing else. I've got nothing left. I'm going to have to go find a Q Cup team. A week after that, went to the awards night for the Raiders, had my name put up on the board saying departing players, and I didn't get a chance to tell anyone I was leaving. That was how I was told to everyone else. And it broke my heart, but it's like so many people have got everyone's got their own journey of how they get to where they are. And the week after that, got a call from my manager saying Trent Barrett said he's going to get you here regardless of what is happening behind the scenes. And I said, whatever, just send me the contract, whatever it is, I'll sign it. And I've got a photo on my phone still of Abby and I that night. She's taking a selfie of her, obviously stoked, and I'm just crying, going, like, we get another chance at it. And I remember rocking into that pre-season going, if it doesn't happen this year, it's done. And I was the fittest I've ever been. My day one time trial was the fastest of my whole pre-season. So I trained every day that off season, and came into that pre-season the fittest I've ever been. And then leading into that season, one of the halves that were here ended up having a fight with the coach and left to a different club. And essentially I was the last one standing, and Mitchell Pearce was supposed to come to the club and was either coming here or to Newcastle, and toured our facilities. I remember seeing him thinking, like, if you come here, I'm out of a job. So it's a very strange world. And then I remember being at the pub one night with the boys, and I checked my phone, and he'd signed with Newcastle. So I'm the last man standing. I walk into the bathroom, call Abby, and I go, he's not coming. It's just me. And played the first eight games of that season. Funnily enough, round one we played Newcastle, which was where Mitchell Pearce went, and he kicked the field goal to beat us. So I don't know how stoked Manly were with the signing, but that was like another sliding doors moment. Played 8 games that season, did my ACL again here, and I remember sitting in that change room. No contract for the next year, like bawling my eyes out. Dad comes into the change room, sitting next to me in my locker. It's heartbroken. Like, your whole world's shattered, right? And I do that whole back end of that season, the 20 or the 18 weeks or whatever it is, without a guarantee of a contract for the next year, rehabbed basically every day, like a full-time job. Got to that off season, got given the smallest contract he could get to still be in a first grade system back with Manly again, and the journey kept going, and played a few games in the halves the next year, flipped and flopped around, and the back end of that year or the following year, I sort of had a realisation when I was playing half. We got smacked by 30 or 40 a few weeks in a row, and I remember sitting in the change rooms at the end of the year going, maybe this isn't for me. Maybe I'm not a half. And the following year, I ended up playing a little bit of hooker off the bench. The hooker we had at the time, Api Coruscant, was an absolute weapon. Like, went to Penrith, won 2 or 3 comps, and now is one of the highest paid players in the game. And they moved him on because we had a guy under him who was arguably better in Manase Whanau, and was an unbelievable talent, like 2 years younger than me, and an absolute freak. So I sat on the bench behind him and played a position that I'd never played before, just to get me in the team and around the team. And a few years post that, he ended up in a bit of trouble with the police and ended up in jail. And then they're going, "We don't have a hooker," and I'm sitting there going, "Well, I'll do it." And 4 or 5 years ago, I was the last one standing again, and here I am playing 120 first grade games at hooker that I've never played in my whole life, just because, like, I was just always there. I was just a hard worker, and they get lucky. And it's like the sliding doors. Thinking about all those moments to get me to where I am now is, yeah. Some people are lucky to get one, where I might have got 4 or 5. But it's very cool to reflect on and think how different everything could have been if one of those things didn't happen. But yeah, as I said, like, thinking about the people that played a role in that journey, and Abby especially, and she had to deal with me during those 2 ACLs and the shoulder reconstruction and the countless calves and hemis that I had throughout the whole journey. That she was always such a ray of sunshine through all that. And at the best of times, I'm not the happiest bloke in the world. So to go home and have the happiest woman in the world in the same house is, I was very lucky. And I was actually talking to a brother about it the other day and saying, like, everyone needs an Abby, but not everyone deserves one. And I was lucky to get her in the end. And actually, thinking about that, we've been together for 11 years this year. Got married in 2024. Started going out at the end of year 11, but we actually dated in year 7. And she's I'm gonna tell her version of the story because she loves telling it. Started dating in year 7, and she reckons after 2 or 3 weeks, got one of my mates to break up with me because I tried to hold her hand walking down to the bus stop. So she loves that one and reckons it's the truth. I don't think it's the truth. I'm not going to say my side of the story, but yeah, she's a saint. She's a weapon, and I've been very fortunate to have her and her family in my corner. Her family and my family get along really well, and being from a small country town, it obviously makes things very easy. But her dad and my dad and the mums both get along really well, and obviously makes our time together way more enjoyable because we can do it as a double family. Abby's brother's a legend. I spend a lot of time with him, and he's one of my best mates. And the way he gets along with my brothers, and the whole thing is very, very fortunate.
Yeah, that's a crazy timeline. It's crazy how many sliding doors, as you say, moments you've had. And like you said, people only get a few, and like you've had many, but the key thing to remember is, like, you've been there ready for the door to open every time, which most of the time you don't have a lot of reason to. Something I find super interesting is you talking about, I think you were referring to a time between when you signed for the Howard Matts team at the Raiders, and you said that you weren't the best person in that time. What do you mean by that?
Post that, when I went through, basically whenever I thought I was doing well at footy, I thought I was the man. So I was
So what does that look like?
It's just like I didn't really care much about other people or how I made people feel, or I was selfish, I guess, in my approach to how I went about things, and my training, and like being at home. I was not always miserable, but I just felt like the world revolved around me. When as soon as I had it all come crashing down, realised that this is not the person I want to be, and the person that I was never like that growing up. So to have those realizations and to still have Abby put up with that the whole time and then to be where we are now is yeah, I'm very grateful for all of that. And looking back on it now, like the heartbreak of having everything taken away from me is good now, but back then it was the worst thing in the world. And Abby obviously had to uproot her life, moved to Sydney. We started again up here in a little shack and lived in 1-bedroom places for like 6 or 7 years. And we've made the most out of it. We've had a lot of fun, and it's been a hell of a journey, and it's sort of moving into that older part of our lives now, where we're lucky enough to have a place and be living in something that's ours, and potentially, you know, moving forward and having a family and all that sort of stuff. It's very exciting.
Mm. Yeah. Is it can you imagine a world where you don't actually have her alongside you
No,
through this all?
no, I don't know what it looks like. It's yeah, she's a very wonderful lady, and like she's works in like a senior tour travel company, and she just loves old people and talking to oldies and listening to their story, and yeah, she's one of a kind. You got to meet her to understand it, and yeah, obviously it comes from her parents, and her mum's a wonderful woman and has been so good to me and I. She was another, like, she drove me to training when I was 16, 17. It's yeah, it's cool to look back on.
Yeah, and when you're talking about those, like, those worse off times and sort of it kind of stems back to seemingly like a lot as a professional athlete, a lot of your worth is built upon your performances and how you are playing. I guess like in the immediate term, in terms of like the game you just play, but also just in general, how you're performing. How do you think that journey's been sort of, or what do you think that's like for explain to us normal folk, non-professional athletes, what that's like, having your worth literally just be determined by your performances, and maybe how that's evolved through your career.
When it's good, it's good. When it's bad, it's bad. And I had that whole period I was playing half in the NRL was because the result hinges on your performance in that position, and I felt like I was letting so many people down, and like, disregard the social media stuff, just the people in the building. I felt terrible for them. We'd go and sit in a video session after losing, and one of our old coaches used to show every try against us and would be like screaming and yelling, and those would keep me up at night going into those games and those sessions the next day. And still to this day, funnily enough, he's been one of my favourite coaches, just because he was so passionate about what he did, and you knew what was right, you knew what was wrong. So, like, as I said, the good was good, and when we were winning games and I was playing good, it's the best thing ever. People want to talk to you. You're happy to read your social media. You're happy to look at comments and all that sort of stuff. But then when it's wrong, when it's bad, it's really bad. And I don't think I ever got that under control while I was playing. I think the moving from half to hooker, I found that the demands of the position sat better with me. Whereas when I was playing half, the performance, like, the result is based on your performance. So it was about setting tries up, trying to score yourself, manage a game. Whereas when you're playing hooker, and what I found worked best for me was I could just go out there, be a 14-year-old kid, try as hard as I could for as long as I could, and then walk off that field knowing that I had done everything I could to get us in a position to win. And then if I did enough to get us in a position, then it was on the other guys to get the result. So that sat really well with me, and my last 4 or 5 years of that made football so much more enjoyable. But if I was still playing half, I don't know what that looks like, or how I deal with it better. There was years or periods of time where you'd go through games and play terribly, and you'd have to delete Instagram because you'd be too scared to go on it and look at it. And I was by no means a player that warranted any sort of comment, just because of, like, I'm not a well-known figure or any of that, which I was completely fine with. But just the thought of getting one comment or one message from someone breaks your heart, because it's funny. If you go on to read the good comments, you got to be prepared to read the bad comments, because if you're listening to what people are saying about you, then it's your self-worth based on their opinion. And I don't know how kids these days are going to deal with it and moving forward, because the world's so social media driven, and it's, the whole thing's a performance, right? And I get worried about what it looks like bringing kids into that world, or even just having, being at a school and teaching kids, or coaching kids in the role I'm in now, and seeing how much of an impact that has on, obviously, their mental well-being, but also their performance. Because then my whole career, I was scared of making mistakes, and that definitely inhibited the way I played and made me do things that were safe, which is why I found playing in the the position I was in was I could make it safe. And looking back on it now, it's definitely not the right way to do it, but it was just the way that I was comfortable with it. And I don't know if I'd be able to change it if I went back. We did so much work with sports psychs and all that sort of stuff on, you know, trying to be big in big occasions and wanting to make the play and dealing with the error if it happens. And it's such a hard skill to master. And there's not many players that I can see in the game that handle that really well, but the ones that do are extremely good at what they do. And probably to discredit my point before, a lot of the kids these days play the game with such carelessness that I'll make a mistake, but the next one will be even better. And I was just never like that. I could never be like that. And I really respect people that can. It's just not the way I played the game or the way I could play the game.
Mm. And we've kind of gone through your, I guess, early career up until, you know, you've had this, would you say you've played 120?
Yeah, something
games?
like that.
Yeah. Up until now, and recently you've had a few big changes in terms of career. Maybe speak through that and I guess the timeline. So when did this start becoming a reality for you?
So in 2024, I had a head knock that basically left me with symptoms for close to 4 months. So the first sort of 2 or 3 weeks, I basically had a headache every day. The first 2 days after that knock, I was sitting in a dark room the whole time and couldn't leave without making the headache worse. And that sort of headache progressed into a dizziness in front of my eyes, which was like everything moving. And then as that slowly subsided, then I would get the dizziness when I started running. So it was a progressive thing of working back to getting back to playing. And towards the end of that, I went back to playing still with symptoms and on medication just to get back to playing again. Finished the back end of that year with a somewhat normal, but dealing with that for 3 or 4 months, you forget what normal is. What did I feel like this before I had this knock, or is this the new normal, or is this baseline? Like it was a difficult thing for me to comprehend. And then did the whole preseason the next year, battled with a knee thing, another calf and a hemi, 2 knee ops, and then went into that round 8 or 9 game, maybe later. Had another knock 4 weeks later in a reserve grade game. The same thing, symptoms again for 3 or 4 months. And I remember thinking halfway through that I don't want to live like this anymore. And the more you think about the repercussions of what could potentially happen, it's hard to get out of that. And I kept coming back to, I'm accountable to more than just myself now. And you know, I'm married. I'm hoping to have a family one day. And if I can't, like, if my memory and I can't speak properly and I'm not functioning at a normal level in 30 or 40 years, and is it really worth pushing another 3 or 4 to play the game that I've loved since I was a kid? And it's saying it out loud, it sounds like it's such a no-brainer, but I was so conflicted because this game has given me everything. It's all I've ever known. My last HSC exam, literally the very next day, I was full-time training in Canberra. So I'd never worked a job in my life. Never known anything other than professional footy, and I was sick for it. Like, I was so passionate about the game and the results. And when I came here, or even at Canberra, the club, I was so passionate about that place. And then when I came here, seeing the guys that were here already and so passionate about the result and the organisation and the environment that it was in, to take myself away from that was easily the hardest decision I've ever had to make. And yeah, if the next day I woke up feeling fine after a knock, I'd probably keep playing. And even if 3 weeks after that I had another knock, I woke up fine, I would have kept playing. But the delayed symptoms and dealing with that for a long time was a wake-up call. And I remember it would have been 6 or 7 weeks into that, and we played the Tigers here. I was in the coach's box and went down to the change room after the game, and the hardest bit of the whole thing is the half an hour after a game, after the boys have had a win. They're sitting down there talking about the game, or they're having a beer, you know, talking nonsense about what happened during the game. And there's one thing to be involved in a team or a squad but then it's another thing to be involved in the team that played on the weekend. And I found sitting in that change room after that I'd go in there, sing the team song with them, and then I'd leave straight away because I couldn't be in there and seeing. It sounds greedy, but just seeing them being so happy and me not being involved in it. And after that Tigers game, I went home and sat on the floor and couldn't even say what I was going to say without crying. And Abby said, "What's wrong?" And I said, "I think I'm done." Yeah, and then that sort of rolled into conversations with the doctor, and obviously Abby never wanted me to play any longer anyway, and Mum was the same. But it was, like I said, it was just so much a part of my world that it's like, I'd rather you cut my arm off. If it was another injury, if it was a shoulder or a knee or a hip or an ankle, I can operate on that 9, 10, 11 times, and I would have. But to only have one brain and to be scared of what's coming, it's yeah, like looking back on it now, I'm not proud of the decision that we made, and having to get there sort of somewhat on my own volition was a challenge. I wish someone, even the doc, when I was speaking to him through the whole process, I just wanted someone to make a decision for me. So for me to have to do it myself was heartbreaking. And then when I told the doc and he said it's the right decision, I just said, "Well, I wish you told me that 6 weeks ago. I've been battling with this the whole time." And then, yeah, the club sort of being happy enough to move me into a coaching role, and yeah, I'm essentially about to sign a longest contract I've had, and I'm not even playing. So there's 6 or 7 weeks there of like being distraught, thinking I'm gonna have to go teach I got a teaching degree. I'm gonna have to go teach somewhere, and that whole last year was going through a placement and being at a school that was not what I loved, and seeing kids that not, it's going to sound funny, but didn't appreciate the background that I came from. Like, I was going to this school and teaching Tuesday and Thursday morning rugby league, and kids aren't listening to me. And I'm thinking, well, if you're not listening to me or guys that have played 100 games, how are you going to listen to a normal teacher? And that spun me a bit. So that whole time I was dealing with that, thinking that I wanted to be a teacher before going into that placement, and then going through that placement and wondering, I don't know if this is for me anymore. And then if I don't do that, what am I going to do? So coming to the back end of the decision and then getting all my paperwork and stuff signed off, my family and I knew pretty early what we were going to do. So it was nice to be able to deal with that just as a small sort of close group. With basically the only people that knew were the people that we told, which was nice. And then it would have been 2 or 3 months later when the paperwork was finally signed off by the NRL and confirmed that, you know, medically retired was a possibility. For then it to come out in the news and be posted on social media and all that sort of stuff, and the messages that I got from guys I played with, to fans, to people that watched the game, to guys that I grew up with, to those guys that got me to where I am now was really cool. And like looking back on it now, and every time I thought about it back then, it brought me to tears. And to, as I said, be able to deal with it with our family first, and then sort of let that die down, then have it dealt with on a somewhat bigger stage was the perfect way of doing it. And it's worked out really well now. And I'm now in a position to coach those guys that I still remember, the coaches that I had when I was 16s and 18s, and how big of a role they played in my life. And as I said, to potentially be one of those guys for, if it's one or two players, then that's all you can ask for.
Wow, man, I can't imagine almost the isolation you would feel. A lot of like what you do is built on toughness and grit. And to make that sort of decision over something that's just like, it's so different to what you're used to doing. The decisions you make are based, like I said, on that grit. So it's just, props to you. That would have been very difficult.
Well, it's funny now, because if someone came to me after a head knock and said, "I feel dizzy," I'd say, "You're joking." And then for it to happen to me twice, yeah, like the back end of it, you know, people are like, none of the boys would ever talk about you like that, but it just, the thought of having my whole game based on that, and then having someone say, I don't know if he's serious, or you know, that broke my heart. And I knew that no one was talking about it, but just the fact that it was a possibility of, oh, he's soft or he's taken an easy option, was by far the hardest thing I had to deal with. And because the whole thing's subjective, because no one can tell how I feel, and no one can tell if I'm dizzy, or no one can tell if I've got a headache. So dealing with an ACL or a shoulder reconstruction, there's always a logical progression in the rehab and what I need to do to be back to playing. And with the head knock stuff, it was like a day by day thing. If I wake up feeling good, I'll try and run. If I get through the run feeling all right, maybe we can up the run the next time we run. And there was just so many times where I felt like I was starting to get there, and then we'd go too hard, and then they'd send me backwards. And so many times I'd be training on my own with one of the support staff here. And that's the other thing, the support staff at this club, through every rehab I've had, but especially the concussion staff, I've been so lucky and fortunate to spend so much time with them and have them to care so much about my health, first of all, or me as a person, first of all, and my health as well. It's yeah, it's really cool. The physio here is the reason I started seeing a psychologist in the last sort of 2 or 3 months, and it sort of pushed me in a path that I'm very comfortable with where I am as a person at the moment. And regardless of what happens with this coaching role, or whether I end up in a school or where I end up, I'm way more comfortable with it now than I was 3 or 4 months ago.
So do you think, like, I guess opening up a bit more about what goes on in your head has kind of helped you move through the whole worth thing, as in like taking your worth out of, my performance on the weekend? Like, now you don't have the chance to actually perform.
Yeah,
So it's like,
definitely. I thought the only conversation I needed to have was with a doctor who would tell me I'm going to be fine or I'm not going to be fine. And I told our physio, he said, you need to go see someone. And I said, I don't, I just need someone to tell me if I'm going to be right or if I'm not. And he said, no, you don't, you need more than that. And I sat down with the physio, the psychologist, would have been a week after that, and it was the best thing I'd ever done. And you go in there thinking you're going to end up talking about how I feel right now, and then you get in there and she doesn't say anything, and your whole life comes out in front of you. And 2 or 3 of those sessions, I was crying for the majority of it and just couldn't get through what I wanted to say. And yeah, it would have been crazy for her too, because I walked in there saying, I don't know if I'm retiring, I don't know where I'm going to live, I don't know if I'll ever have a family, like all this, I don't know how much money I'm going to have, everything. And then 3 weeks later, I've walked in there and I've gone, I'm retiring, I don't know what job I'm going to have, I don't know all this. And then every time I went back, another thing would be figured out, another thing would be figured out. And by the end of it, I walked in there and said, this is the most secure I've been in 4 years. I know where I'm living. We just bought a house, and everything was, I would love to have seen it from her perspective. And yeah, you just wonder how much would have happened if I didn't go and start speaking to someone or moving forward in that part of my world. And like, I never thought I had issues that I needed to speak about. You get through life fine, but then you sit back and think, am I doing this right? Am I doing that right? Am I giving the best version of myself to these people? And it was such an eye-opening experience. And then obviously to be sitting one-on-one with someone and for you to be crying about what you're talking about is such a strange feeling. But it's it's been really good for me, and I'll keep seeing it for the foreseeable future. And I would never have done it if it wasn't for our physio. And it's another one of those guys that one of my good mates now, and fortunately got me into a position where I was able to do so.
Yeah, it's funny. It's like the classic thing of things always make sense in reverse. Like, you can probably look back now and everything lines up. Do you think the whole psychology stuff, like seeing a psychologist or at least having that as a part of your, I don't know, whether you almost like performance management as a player, like, do you think that's a valuable tool for any professional athlete?
Yeah, absolutely. And like, it's funny because if I look back on my career and the role that I played in some of those games, like, no one would be thinking about my role at all. But to me, it's everything. And it's that party thing they talk about, where you go to a party and you think everyone's looking at you, but everyone's worried about themselves. And I struggled so much with that, and like guys in our team are on $1 million and have so much media scrutiny, and I like none of that was not me, and I just felt like I was the most important. I was the reason why we weren't doing well. I was the reason why we were doing well, and it's looking back on it now, it's crazy. So I think voicing that was a really good thing, but like being a stable and good person outside of sport is what keeps you stable in the sport. And fortunately or unfortunately, I figured it out the day after I retired. So it's I don't know what it would look like if I figured it out earlier, but I probably wouldn't have been seeing a psych if I was playing well or still playing. So it's almost another sliding doors moment where I don't know what it looks like if it doesn't happen.
Yeah, and you don't know what it looks like if you continue to have this sort of pressure on yourself. Like pressure builds; it's not going to go away. So what that could have looked like. If you were to talk to you after the first head knock, what sort of bits of advice would you give to yourself? I'm sure there's so many people in that same position as you, where you feel kind of helpless. Like, what would you tell that person?
I don't know. I would say it'll pass, but that would have meant nothing to me back then because I wanted it to pass tomorrow or today. I don't need it passing in 6 weeks, 7 weeks, 8 weeks. Because in our game, if like I always had the mantra of as soon as I got a jersey, I'm not giving this up for anything. So then to have to watch someone else play my position and do well in my position, all I wanted was that back. So if you told me 2 months you'll be fine, it's not enough. So I don't know. I feel like every time something goes wrong, you'll always figure it out. And speaking with our psych now, she says, like, what sort of qualities did you have before you went into being a footballer? And I'm resilient, hardworking. And she actually said, going like being a footballer, what skills do you have? And I said those, and she said, well, did you have them before you were a footballer or because of football? So then post football, if something goes wrong, I'm still a resilient, hardworking person. I'll figure it out. So probably realising that earlier would have been nice. But as I said, it's such a time thing in this game where we've got 26 weeks or whatever it is. And if someone gets your jersey for 2 weeks and plays good for those 2 weeks, makes it very hard to get it back. So that was always that concern. But as I said, if I know I'll always figure something out, whatever it is, but I just want to figure it out now. So for the time crunch to be bothering me the way it did, I don't know.
Yeah, and I'm sure back then if someone asked who you are, you would probably say to them, "I'm a professional athlete. I play professional footy," and that's probably all you would say. And it's a lot of people. We all pretty much do that. If someone asks you, "Who are you?" Like, what do you do? It's career based. How would you describe yourself now?
It's going back on that point. The thing I struggled the most with every conversation I had with anyone was always about rugby league, which I completely understand because for an outsider looking in and to get an insider view on that, it would be so cool to hear about certain players or what we do before games or what we do after games or what someone said to me during the game. It'd be so cool for people to hear. But that was me 24/7 outside of being at home because I don't think Abby watched one full game of my.
For real?
Yeah, so that was nice being at home, and Abby she couldn't care less whether I played or not. And but every conversation with everyone outside of footy was footy, footy, footy. And that was one of the things I struggled the most with speaking to the psych was now what happens? What do I talk about now? She said, well, you can still talk about football. It's just now you're in a different role. It's a different thing. You're still a fan of football. You can still watch football on the weekend. And that was one of the tougher things was sort of telling those people that love football so much, like my old man, for example, that now football for me is done, was one of the hardest things I had to do with the whole thing because of the journey that it took us to get there and how big a role they played in it. And I knew how passionate they were about the game and how much they loved me playing it, for example. And it took me 3 or 4 appointments with her to even get the courage to broach the subject with her, and then to speak about it with Dad and tell him that this is not feasible anymore. So going back to your point, I don't know. I think I love the coaching stuff that I'm doing now, and I guess I'd say I'm a coach. But yeah,
Outside of career, though,
I don't know.
I mean, it's a clear, obvious one to me. Seemingly, you're a husband.
Correct. Correct. Yeah, I agree with that.
You
Yeah.
speak upon your relationship with your, well, more so about your wife, but you speak upon it like it's like the most meaningful thing. Like without her, you couldn't have done the thing that you talk about you doing all the time, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
like in reverse,
absolutely.
it's like that's the core of who you are.
Yeah.
Is
absolutely.
your relationship with her, and especially having
Absolutely.
been together for 11 years.
Yep.
I can't imagine how many experiences you've been through, good and bad, that have shaped.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, as you said, so many of my experiences, whether it's travel or, you know, coming home after a tough day or renovating a place or fighting about something or whatever it is, it's like every time you think about life, that's our life, right? It's not just me, it's us. And yeah, looking like now that you say that, I agree with that. The other thing is probably a brother. I feel like spend a lot of time talking with or trying to figure out problems that we're all dealing with, and I'm proud of the relationship that we've all got as a crew, and I guess the son's the other one. It's I think the older I get, the more I appreciate who they are as people, but what they did for me, but who they are as people, and the amount of work and dealing with 4 kids, and yeah, it's I can only imagine what their discussions were when we're not around and how hard things would have been for them. So it's, to us, it was sweet. Like, we'd jump in the car, drive to training, wouldn't bother us one bit. And like, I was going to school the next day, I was doing nothing at school, sitting around mucking all day, and then mum and dad have to go to work, or dad was working shifts, being a policeman, driving to Mossvale, an hour and a half away, starting work at 6, finished at 6, driving an hour and a half home, 5 hours sleep, go shearing the next day. You used to take it for granted, and now looking back on that, it's, as I said, the older I get, the more respect and appreciation I have for what they did.
Yeah.
And what they still do.
Yeah. What do you appreciate the most about brotherhood?
I think the fact that obviously we don't always agree with what either one's doing or what they've got going on, but it's just doesn't matter if you agree or not. We're stuck in this together, and doesn't matter if I like you today, if I don't like you today, we're brothers, and we wake up tomorrow and we're brothers again. And whatever your problem is my problem, whatever my problem's your problem. And coming from the town like that, and as 4 boys too, we don't speak about how we feel or any really important stuff that's going on. So I think going to see the psychologist was just like, once I started speaking about everything, I realised that I've been like this for 20 years. And then looked at my 3 brothers and they're the exact same as me. So now it's trying to move forward and make them realise that you don't have to be like what people like home are like, or what, you know, country middle-aged males are like, where they don't talk about things and they deal with this stuff on their own. That's not the world we live in anymore.
Yeah. Do you feel that as like almost like taking a big step out of a big chapter of your life? I feel like a lot of that is just like in finding out the immediate next phase, but then thinking about, you know, what's the big picture, the next 5-10 years. You know what I mean? Like, what do you think that next big chapter looks like for you? What's this next?
This keeps me up at night because I don't know. So I know what I'm doing the next 3 or 4 years. Outside of a professional capacity, I'd love to have a family and see what that looks like for Abby and I. And Abby's a very career-driven person and loves her job and loves working hard and gets a real kick out of succeeding at what she does. And she's very good at what she does. So it's there's going to be challenges along the way about, you know, how much time she spends at home and how long she stays away from work and what that looks like, which we'll have to deal with together. And I'm excited to see what that looks like and how she looks as a mum and how she deals with all that sort of stuff, because Obviously, it's something that we've never experienced before, and you'd only experience it for the first time once. So dealing with that will be very interesting. But I don't know where we live. I don't know. Yeah, I said the same thing to the psychologist. I said, I don't know what we're going to do, and she said, well, does it matter? The same way you've figured it out before, you'll figure it out again. And to be honest, I've never been into 5-year plans, 10-year plans. We're here now, we'll see where we end up. And like, rugby league's a perfect example of that, because you sign a 2-year contract, a 1-year contract. After that, I could be in Newcastle, I could be in England, I could be in New Zealand. And we've lived like that for the last 12 years. So if we've done it for 12 years, we might as well do it for 12 more.
Isn't it funny that you almost have the most certainty you've ever had, and it's like after stepping away, like so in a difficult way, I guess, like from the thing you love, it's kind of funny how that works out that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. It's like whenever someone's got a problem, or someone I'm speaking to's got a problem, it's like you'll figure it out. It'll figure itself out one way or another, and literally that's exactly what happened. It took me 6 weeks, but we figured it out, and now it's more figured out than it ever has been. So it sucks hearing it at the time, because you just want a solution now, but we don't always get that. And yeah, if I look back 15 years, even further, 20 years, to being a kid running around Crookville Oval, and the smell of deep heat in the men's change rooms and stuff still takes me back to being back there now. And to think about where we are now, and the journey that we've had, and the career that I've had, and the people that I've got to bring along with me. We took 25 people to Vegas a few years ago to play in the season opener over there, which was unbelievable. They've been to Perth to watch us play in the Perth Nines, and been in New Zealand, and everywhere, every away game. Like, we have a beer after the game, and there's 10 or 15 people from back home, family members that come to watch games. So it's been such a cool journey, and to be able to have all those people along there with us, and it's hits me in the feels.
Yeah. What sort of things do you find? Like, in terms of, do you have any hobbies or things that you want to pursue? Interests, things that have tickled you in the past, but you kind of haven't really had the chance to pursue because of your career?
Not particularly. This game is so consuming, and
Yeah.
I spent so much time, before I ended up with the Canberra thing and then did my ACL when I moved up to Sydney, I was 24/7 football. I literally could not think about anything other than football for every second of the day for 7 days a week. So as soon as I did my ACL that second time up at Manly, after I had no contract for the next year, and I went back to uni, finished a couple of degrees, and then that was when I sort of realised that there's more to it than being a footballer, and I have a different avenue now, and I'm not as scared because I've got something to fall back on. But outside of that, I don't know. I've been loving golf lately, and I feel like because I'm so bad at it, it's something that I can really see improvement in, which you obviously love getting better at everything, but to be so bad, and it's such a finicky game, that to try and be able to master it is something that's going to take so long. And I'm hoping it's not just a phase, and it's something that I stay with for a long time, because I think it's such a good hobby for guys my age and getting older too, that it's not just let's go to the pub and have a beer as a way of catching up. You can go and be outside and travel to some cool places and play some cool courses, and it's more than just drinking and sitting around. And
yeah, I wonder if that's because now you have the license. It's like because your whole career, it's been about performing, and never, like, you have to be perfect. You can never be shit. It's just, you always have to be 100%. Maybe it's now because you don't have to be that, you get the chance to actually suck at something, and almost like that is, you're just drawn to that because it's like, oh, I get the chance to fail at something and then get better at it and work at it.
But even now, if I look at, say, if I booked a random tee time and played with 3 randoms, I'm still not at that stage where I can go and confidently play with them, because I'm still embarrassed about my skill level, which, as a middle-aged male, it's hard to put yourself in those positions, because we want to be the best at everything we do, and to have people laugh at you sucks. So it's tough. I'm still practicing a lot behind closed doors, but hopefully there comes a time soon where I'm in a position where I can do that.
Yeah. One other thing I want to talk about quickly is regarding, I guess you speak about all the influence people have had on you through your career, and I think speaking from, you seem to have a lot of care for the time that people put into you when you were young. You also speak about having a family at some point. What sort of values do you want to instill in your children, whether they're playing professional sport or not? And
I think resilience is one of the first ones. I think like looking at kids now and obviously generalizing, but everyone's made to feel so comfortable all the time, and I definitely didn't grow up like that, and I don't want my kids to grow up like that. I think being able to deal with situations and deal with stress and deal with problems is such a skill that is probably not underappreciated, but just underutilized, and people don't have the capacity to do so. So I feel like that's definitely one, and probably that goes alongside that is hard work. And as I said, hard workers get lucky, and those guys that find themselves in positions to be lucky then have to have done the work to be able to hold that position. And then it's like being kind, I think is the other one. I think the way that the world works now, there's so much, even like with the social media stuff, and you hear so many horror stories of how people talk to each other on there and like posting about people and all that sort of stuff, that it's only going to get worse. So I feel like they're probably the three main ones. I'd love to have kind, hardworking, resilient kids that take care of themselves but take care of others as well.
Who taught you to be kind?
I feel like I get different aspects of kindness from a lot of different people. Mum's obviously very kind, like being a school teacher, like warm soul, easy to talk to other people. She's always been very good at that, and I feel like her dad, my pop, would have done anything for anyone, and that's the sort of, I strive to be like that. I think Pop is a very, very kind, caring, worldly man, and I appreciate a lot of what he's done for me, but seeing how he treats other people and how he interacts with other people is really cool. And then growing up in a country town, you interact with everyone you see down the street, or you're walking, or you take someone's kid to training, or like all those kind of attributes. I think probably that you see, and it doesn't mean a lot to you at the time, but when you're in that position and you can do something to help someone else, it's yeah, very special.
Awesome. Well, I feel like we've been through a lot. Josh, do you have any questions?
I guess the thing that intrigues me is, how does it feel to sit here as, like, I guess as more as a coach, but as a spectator and not as a player anymore, like knowing, in a few weeks, months, the boys will be on the field playing and you'll be like on the sidelines watching, cheering them on?
It'll still break my heart. Yeah. It's I feel so silly to get so upset about it, but it's like, it's been such a big part of our lives, as I said, and I don't know, it sounds like talking to old guys that have finished playing the game, and like old guys from the 60s and 70s, and they still feel it. So it's going to be something that doesn't happen overnight, and to still feel that later. Even just like running out there and being in a one-on-one physical competition with someone who thinks they can run over the top of you is something that you don't get it in any other line of work, really. And I love that so much about the game, and to be able to, it's black or white whether I've won or I've lost that, and yeah, I'm going to miss that the most. And as I said before, the whole change rooms thing after the game, and having a beer with the boys and just talking nonsense, and it's as I said, it's so different to be in the organisation, but then to be wearing the jersey from the game that just was played is, they're worlds apart.
Why do you say it feels silly to say that and think that way?
In the whole scheme of things, like as I said before, I'm such a minuscule part of the game, and the game is such a minuscule part of the world. It's yeah, I guess looking at it from a wider lens and seeing, to a lot of people, it's their Friday night, and it's after that game, a lot of people don't even think about it again. But to be stuck in that world, it's all you think about. And saying it out loud to people that aren't from that world, I can't imagine what it sounds like to you guys or the listeners or whatever it is to fully comprehend how I feel about it and how we feel about it as a group, because every single one of those guys has been their whole world, and to get to where we get to, it takes all of you, and to have it removed is very, very strange.
And I suppose there's nothing, like to your point, there's nothing else that replicates it to the full extent. And that's probably the hardest thing. It's like the only way you're going to get the highs and the lows from it is from playing.
Absolutely. And I spent 15 years with 17 to 30-year-olds, basically every day of the week for that whole time. All we did was talk rubbish, get fit together and train hard. And it's so lucky to be able to do it, and to call that a job is crazy. Like, we turn up every morning, we do the same thing. It's so cool. And then to be able to run out and then put everything that we've worked in together and then see the results of our work then be paid off on a weekly basis is, really, really cool.
You mentioned, before about speaking to ex-players. What's that been like? Have you reached out to more ex-players since being medically retired, or is this from just your experience talking to them about it through your playing career?
No, it's more, I had this conversation with one of the other ex-players actually rugby league is such a small niche group. And then retired NRL players is also a small niche group. But then to have medically retired players, that's nicher again. So it's hard to find, like, people retire and that's just part of life and they can work towards it and they sort of almost see it coming. But then to have it medically happen and to have it taken away from you in the space of 6 weeks is, it's nuts. So to then go from that, like, niche group to an even niche one, to find people in a similar position is very hard. But I feel like we have a players association that spend a lot of time and effort in looking after mental well-being and sort of progressing career-wise and stuff after the game, and continually checking in. They've sort of opened up another network of guys that have been in similar positions or are now out of the game and finding other things. And obviously being on the beaches now, and there's so many Manly players that still get around the area from back then that spend a lot of time at training or in sort of, even if it's an ambassador role or at functions or whatever it is. And now our conversations have changed from the game on the weekend to, how I'm going, how I'm finding retirement. And even as I said before, like that one-on-one battle that we have, I was talking to an old guy the other day and I said, I just wish I could go out there one more time and just smack one more bloke one more time. And he goes, don't worry, I still do. And he was like 75. So it's just part of something that's within you. And to hear a 75-year-old say it almost scares me, because I don't want to have to deal with it for that long, but it's probably a good thing, right?
Yeah, I think it also would probably give you that surety that it's not just you feeling this. Obviously, you know that, but it is probably nice to hear other people be like, I understand this.
Yeah.
And in a sense, you get this community now. It's a different community from your playing sense, but you have guys who have also been through that.
Yeah, absolutely. And 5 to 10 years from now, a lot of my guys that are my age, my best mates that have come through the grades with us, will all be in a similar position. So I'm almost in just a holding pattern now until I get my mates back away from the game and be able to do stuff on the weekend that we don't have to worry about what happens on Monday, because we don't really have anyone in that capacity to answer to and physically worry about. So I've just jumped off early. I've got a few guys that have done it before me, and actually one of my other good mates who medically retired with a similar thing, who, God love him, has reached out a couple of times and really taken an interest in how I'm going and all that sort of stuff. So it's such a chaotic, hardcore game, but there's so many wonderful people in it, and I've been lucky I've been unlucky to go out the way that I've gone out, but been lucky to have the support that I've had from so many different people from 1,000 different backgrounds.
Awesome. Do you have any more questions?
The only last curiosity I have is, like, as you think about entering the stage of fatherhood, how do you want your kids to know you in terms of your career? Like, do you want it to be this known thing that, dad was this guy, like, on the field? Or have you thought about that at all?
I have, and I've almost thought about it the other way. Like, I don't want to be which is what scares me a lot about coaching, because obviously being in the game, I know how much it takes all of you, and coaching's similar, if not worse. And I don't know if I want to be that dad that's like that, especially early. So, like, obviously the coaches have to be here Saturday, Sundays, most days, because we play, and they're coming to an age where they've got kids that are playing weekend sport and, you know, getting dropped off to school and stuff, and they don't get to do that because this is a non-negotiable that you need to be here. So that is a challenge that will come up, and I don't know whether that sits well with me at the moment. But I think if any of my kids wanted to watch any of the games or learn about what I was like as a footballer, all I want them to know is that I tried my guts out every weekend. And if they thought I wasn't very good tactically or I wasn't very good skill-wise, as long as they took that away, then I'd be happy.
No, that's awesome. It's cool how that's just like irrespective of the game. It's not how well I could pass, kick, run 10 meters. It's just the work ethic, the values that I put into the game.
Well, I could always control that, and I was never like one of the lower ranking hookers in the whole competition, which I was fine with, because I knew that I had the respect of the guys in the team next to me. And the way that we all played together, I knew how capable they were of winning games and doing what they did, that I didn't need to even worry about that. So I always felt a lot of love from within the walls, and that was all I ever needed to. And that's why I played. That's why you play rugby league. You don't do it to get paid or like I didn't. I just played it to have a beer after the game with the boys and walk in Monday and talk nonsense about the weekend. And that's the bit that obviously I miss the most. But you always sort of have that. Just don't have it as accessible as I did previously. Now it's almost like you got to go and seek that out to make time for that to happen, whereas it just happened organically here.
Awesome, man. Well, yeah, thank you for sharing that timeline and being so open about everything you've sort of gone through. It's it truly is like not really that comparable to much else. You know, there's aspects, but I just can't think of a situation I could possibly be in with my current lifestyle that replicates that. It just doesn't. It's so unique. I think it's extremely admirable that you were able to get through that in a decision-making sense by yourself, with push and pull from both sides. You know, I'm sure there's plenty of people who wanted you to continue playing, but then there's the people you love most being like, no, you know. So to be able to get through that is extremely impressive, and I think it shows a lot about your character, which seemingly you're coming to understand in your own life a little bit more, as that's who you are, not how you played on the field. It was the values you brought to the game, and that's who you are, and you can carry that forward. So
I appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, boys. Thank you.